Sup everybody. Today it's Ute out of the garage, Doritos in the garage, because we got to get that thing built. How's it going everybody? Welcome back to Make It and Break It. My name's Andrew and today we are not working on our completely unhelpful Project Ute Chrysler 300C. Chasing electrical problems and whatever else we're doing. No, today we got to get everything moved around and shuffle around. So we have to do an engine swap on the Doritos Locos RX8 in functionally like a week and a half. So the engine's gonna come in the next day or two, I think, and hopefully our mounts come in too. But we need to get this car out of here. Need to get this and this and those and all that in a place where they're not going to get in the way and we can access maybe some of them while we have a car that's going to be in here and non-mobile for at least a couple weeks. So cue up the swap. That's terrifying. No. Jesus. Well, that bucket was terrifying. Huge spider. I don't know if you guys saw it. I don't know, there's a huge spider had freaked out because I was moving the bucket around so much and had hidden inside one of the sockets that was sitting in that bucket. So I'm checking out the sockets to make sure everything, there's just a spider right there. No thanks. All right, so I went to go pull the RX8, turn it on, let it warm up so I can move it in here and park it for like the next 2 weeks, and the battery's dead, which is not awesome. I'm probably gonna have to replace that too. So with the battery dead, I can't really move anything and I can't really get to a lot of the RX8 work I want to do today until my jump pack charges up, which I took it camping to keep everything else charged, and so I need to charge it for a little bit. So while that's happening, we're actually going to figure out a couple more mounts, wall mounts, ceiling mounts actually, for some of our motorcycle gear. So let me show you here. So for those of you who are not motorcycle people, there's essentially two main type of stands that get used on motorcycles. You get rear stands like that, this big white one, which go under your rear wheel. In fact, I have both my bikes set up with spools on either side, so that it has these little like fingers come up underneath the spools and lift it up, let you work on the chain, like let you do a lot of stuff in the rear. And then this is a front stand, so this goes underneath the front forks and lifts the bike that way. There's another type of front stand that goes into the steering head, but basically I have front and rear stands. These are what you'll see on most bikes at like a racetrack. There are motorcycle center stands that hit the bottom, but on sport bikes like I like to ride, they don't usually have a frame on the bottom. You're just jacking right up into the oil pan and everything else. So you don't really use center stands on these types of bikes because they just wobble and it's not a good deal. But they just take a bunch of space down here that I need for like walking around and storing other things. So I figured one of the better ways to store that is actually go ahead and go up here and put some ceiling racks in for these, so I can just like hang them up on the ceiling, right, and they'll lean them up against like this wall somewhere. And we'll do some of that right now. So I'm gonna go CAD it up, and I'll show you guys the CAD file and maybe the final printed part. All right, so a quick look into what we CADed up in here. So I'm in my SolidWorks program, and the basic idea here is creating like a ceiling hook that'll support it from two sides, but doesn't have all of the limitations that like two side-by-side J-hooks would have. In a setup like this, but if it was just two of these pieces mirrored, they'll tend to pull away at the same point, whereas if you got one piece that wants to pull away, if all the force is going in, so let's say it's mounted on the ceiling, kind of like this, the force is going to come down in this direction, and so that'll tend to push on this, which essentially will spread this arm out this way. So if both of them did that, what you'd actually end up getting is you'd get a piece that just kind of swings away and probably stresses itself out and breaks it. Where if you have two opposed pieces like this, as they pull, they'll actually clamp on the piece and maintain a fairly vertical stress line. At least that's the idea. Fairly vertical stresses through this connection. So the thinking here is that you take your you have your mount or your stand comes up through here, and then all these openings are sized so that you bring it up and then just rotate it so it'll spin, and the main central bar that's getting hung will go straight down this axis and get that clamping, and hopefully not distort as much as a plastic piece would if it were two parallel J-hooks. So when we throw this into our software here, you can see it's currently printing up. It's a big print, but it's only this long because I made it a solid piece just for structural reasons. So we'll close out of that for now. You throw that into our slicer here, and this is kind of how we set it up. So I set it back up here just because I get better adhesion on smaller pieces in the back part of the build plate. It's because I think this build plate is not perfectly level, so if I'm not using this back corner, some pieces will slide around if I don't get it right. So I need to go and level that out at some point, but for this it works just fine. And we set it up like this, basically because we're making a consideration for how the machine will build these parts. So the machine, let's take a look at this preview here for this slice. So the machine builds parts in horizontal layers, essentially, in planar form. So come on now, here we go. So it builds it up like that vertically, right? So the weakest part of almost every print is the interlayer boundary. So the difference between that layer and that layer. So that's usually the weakest part of your print, is right between the layers that you print. So if we build it like this, all the stresses will go along continuous strands on our outside surfaces here. So if we look at this here, you kind of see these, let's zoom in maybe a little bit more. Can see how the layers are gonna come down. So this red layer is your outside layer, These two green layers are your shell layers, essentially. And so when the layer is laid down like this, they transmit stresses really well down the length of the layer, because the adhesion and the strength in that is really good. Which means for things like this edge right here, when this thing gets installed, stresses are going to be running right along this line. So you see it running along this line here, which means we'll get better overall strength of our part when we do it like this. If we were to print it the other way, essentially these lines would be going this way vertically, and so stresses would actually pull the layers apart, whereas now they're going along with the strength of these layers. So this is the kind of best way to set it up, but unfortunately what that means is we'll have to have a lot of support, and that's what those blue markers are here. So these are just support pillars that will hold everything up, because we're essentially building in midair, and 3D printers do not like when you build it in midair, so they put support structures up there to hold everything. I've found that you don't really need that for these holes, but that's how it goes. And then we throw that just to our printer, and new parts will come out eventually, 36-ish hours from now. Okay, our mounts are on the printer and going. However, this is not a short print, because I decided to print them with full infill. So if we can trust our timer here, we've got about 36 hours left. So that'll probably show up on the next episode or so. And our batteries, my charger jumper set is still currently charging. So I'm gonna go run out to the store and pick up something I ordered last week, and pick up a couple tools that we might need with the RX8 here. Alright, so we have made our trips, and now it's time to try and get the RX8 started and into the garage. So, first things first, got our battery pack. This is a XP1 starter. I carry this pretty much on every motorcycle trip. It's kind of a motorcycle gear that I don't think people need, but especially if you're going places where you may not have a charger available, it's nice to have. So kind of the deal is it's a big battery pack that you put your the jumper setup into, and then attach it up to your battery, and hopefully everything works. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so that didn't work, and I'm pretty sure the reason is that battery is completely dead. So we're gonna have to pull it and charge it inside, I guess. So that's awesome. That probably means we need to buy a new battery too. So we'll go do that real quick. All right, so it's the next day, and our battery was super dead. So couldn't quite pick it up last night because of traffic and ridiculousness. So we're just gonna go pick up a new battery and continue trying to get stuff swapped in. So here we go. Well, Harbor Freight struck again. So I got the battery, which is what I left for this morning, and then I stopped by Harbor Freight to get their brake tool kit and some air tool oil for some of my air tools for some of the stuff coming up. And I walked away with a 2-ton folding crane, a 2-ton folding engine stand, and another bag full of tools and pry bars and picks and stuff. I really gotta stop going to that store. So it looks like this episode's turning into a fix the garage up so we can do a bunch of engine replacements episode. So I guess we'll pull everything out and get her done. Alright, I did want to show you guys a quick tip here, especially for those of you with giganto hands. My hands aren't super huge, but they're definitely too big to be working on cars for a living, so here we are. These bolts are real hard to get on there. If we look down here, you see it's a bolt nut combination coming through, except there's not a whole lot of space here, and getting to these back bolts of this set of 4 is real rough. So how I solve this problem is I take a, ratcheting wrench like this, and I get the small, the short, the six points best for this. I think 12 points will work just fine. They're always just a little too loose for me. So I get a 6-point shorty of the size for the nut. And then what I do is I actually take it, set it in here, and I grab a nut, maybe, there we go, grab a nut, drop it in the socket, and grab a lock washer and drop it in there. And that whole thing's pretty much vertical and ready for us to go work. And then it's just a matter of, set this camera up. Dropping this in here like that, and because you take the shorty, the bolt can reach down into the socket. Don't use this with a long socket. With a short socket, the bolt can reach down and engage the nut, and you can get these things snug, hand tight, without having tiny hands. They got a lot of power for the size displacement. All right, so we got a special delivery today. That's right. All right, and we unwrapped it here a little bit. You can see we have our replacement rotary engine. Surprise, surprise. A lot of people who were watching because they wanted to see an RX8 rally race car wanted to see it with the Renesas RX8 engine. So I went to JDM of California and purchased one of their import engines. Comes with an engine and transmission set. Pretty much, other than the hoses, pretty much a complete long block with computer and a bunch of spare sensors. So right now this is in the way. I probably should have had the guy drop it back over there where I wanted it, but oh well, this will be a good practice to move things around. Anyway, we have this thing mostly together. There's a lot of the stuff is loose right now, but these, you might have seen me trying to grind on these a little bit. These are not the right length. So I don't know. Well, the tabs are long enough, but the holes don't line up. As you can see, we're missing a bit. So right now I'm going to try and get something set up to get rid of these. Also, this bolt that came in for attaching your pump to the arm, the extension arm here, this bolt is actually not awesome. So if you look in here at this, I don't know if we can see this. No, let's zoom in. You can see these sorts of nicks on the threads. Well, all of these nicks are basically gumming up every nut that we try and put on here, causing us to have issues. And what it would really cause is this would be super loose because we'd get it stuck right about here, and also we'd never be able to get the nut back off. So I need to go get a new one of those bolts, as well as some material maybe to adjust these straps. But I think before we go do that, I'm gonna go put together the engine stand over here and make sure I'm making just one trip to the hardware store for bolts and lifting gear and everything else, so that I'm not like making 6 trips in the next 2 days, because I have other stuff to do with my life, like somehow prep this engine to go into that Mazda in like 3 days. Given this is my first engine swap, that seems ambitious. So we'll go do that here real quick. So we actually did manage to fix this. Hot tip for everyone who's assembling things that are triangulated, like this is with the tension arms that go down to the base here. Do not tighten everything up. My problem was I tightened up the base here before I had installed these loosely, so everything was just off. And those don't necessarily tighten up in the way they're supposed to when you do that. I figured that out when I was putting that one together. I was like, oh yeah, that's the same setup, I should do that. So I don't have to fix that, thankfully. And that saves me some tools. However, I still do have to go pick up some of this stuff here, as well as a new bolt here and some lifting gear and other things. Our mounts, our ceiling mounts, are coming in here. However, they I'm gonna have to refill once again. I ran out of I'm basically using up my PLA spools, so I had some white left, some black left from that machine over there. I'm gonna have to go get one of my other spools to finish this out. I've got some more black hanging around, so that'll be fine. So we're gonna get that done. I think that's about it for today. We got all of our tooling up. We gotta do some cleanup in here. We aren't gonna get the RX8 in today, partially because I want to do a couple other things first before I put it in here and basically can't move it ever again. Also, I need to rig this thing up and move it, or rig this giant beast up and move it around, so that I can actually get a car in here. So we're gonna cut it for that today. Kind of a garage remake episode, but it's all coming together. I have about 5 days before I want to have the motor swap done on the RX8. Given it's my first motor swap, that's super sketch. So thanks for watching, everyone. This has been another episode of Make and Break It. If you like this video, hit like down below. If you like what we're doing on this channel, we got our RX8 project, our Hyper 10 project over there. We just took it on the beach, and I'm figuring out what I can do to make it semi-safe enough to go take it into dirt. There's a couple of cool off-road vehicle areas in the area that I could go run to. And some other stuff, our 3D printing stuff. We're gonna start seeing more of that as we get into the true RX8 Doritos Locos build here. So if you like all that sort of stuff, definitely subscribe, ding that bell button, so you get notified when we put out new videos, put out several videos a week. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. you know. I'm a little nervous. I did put out a Facebook post today like, hey, we got this engine here, and hopefully I'm not the only one who's nervous. But even if you're a little bit nervous on projects like this or any other crazy project you're undertaking that might be a little bit above your skill level, like most of the ones that I do, got to keep in mind, you already answered the question, why not build it? So just get to it. We'll catch you all later. 300 Ute that decides it doesn't want to do any work or get licensed or anything.